started. It's finally gotten started. Okay, got it.
There it goes. I see it. Yeah, I'm on my
Uh,
phone, so I have very little
no
functionality.
problem.
I'll go ahead and rephrase that. So I read this article by Denisa Rubiku on the German Romantics and how
Hmm.
the Dhamma has come to us in the West, filtered through this German Romantic lens, where um, we're essentially, if we that Dhamma is would move us towards wholeness, towards integration. So this would incorporate things like Jung, and you need to integrate your shadow. Um, and you need to, a full life is one lived in the presence and fullness of the archetypes of the anima, the animus, so on and so forth. The hero's journey, which we talked about just a quick second ago. And in the article, he really talks. The main point there is that that's not really the Dhamma. The Dhamma is the problem with this approach is that there's no endpoint to it. There's no extinguishment of the fire. There's no end to needing fuel for consciousness through clinging. And then he talks about he makes in a page or two makes a good case for the noble Dhamma, as you talk about all the time. And since you oftentimes, I wanted to ask you that just to kind of get your reaction on that, um, because you oftentimes use Freud. Who's the one? Bernays.
Eric Byrne.
Byrne. Yes. Games people play, I think. Um,
I've
and
also mentioned Bernays, who was a nephew of
nephew of Floyd.
Floyd,
Yeah, Freud.
who was the one who was primarily responsible for the development of propaganda that goes into politics and advertisements and all kinds of stuff that has made our planet in a much worse condition.
Yeah. I watched that 5 part. I only watched like one or two of them, but that 5 part on YouTube when you told me about it. But
Oh,
that
yes,
my
the
overall.
century of the self. Yes, that's a very
Yes, that's
good
right. Yeah.
exposition, not just about him, but about the damage that he has done. And yet, even in his very old age, he thought that he hadn't done any damage at all.
Mm. Well, I guess my question, I just wanted your reaction to that. This movement towards wholeness. That therapy would have us do something like that, where you keep
Yes.
coming back to
Hmm.
therapy. But overall, I agree that with Denisar that there's just no end to it, right? You can continue to integrate. You can continue to um, move towards wholeness, and I'm sure you could go through a dozen different paths, such as various forms of spirituality that probably lead you to some kind of happier position in life relative to where you started.
Hmm.
Perhaps a bigger, you can take a bigger perspective on everything. You have a more fluid identity where you don't need to get burned by everything. But some of that's also just natural in the aging process. But overall,
Right.
what's your take? What's your take on that? Because
You could
you
almost
refer to
use.
Freud a lot. You
Hmm.
refer to Jung from time to time. So
Right. Okay. Let us start with the word incremental, like an incremental. The idea would be that the Chinese philosophy that a journey of 1,000 miles starts with but a single step, and that this is very much integrated into the Western philosophy that you're mentioning. Actually, starts out in German Romanticism, and that Tanisaro Bhikkhu is absolutely correct in that. And not only that, but you can see in all of the emails, the advertisements, and all of that that's coming out of the Western Buddhism from both coasts, both from Spirit Rock and also the Berry Center, that they very much promote that. They're very much into that. Oh, we'll do one more course, take one more Zoom call, do one more thing, and it will give you a little bit. And that's the way that they are um, it's actually part of the mentality that I think that's even much older than that, coming out of Christianity, uh, in the sense that you're a sinner, you've got an original sin, you were born broken, and that there's nothing that you can do about it, and that you need Jesus as a savior, and that this is the foundational quality of Christianity, though it seems to have gotten so politicized now that Christianity has become, part of the Republican Party, to where politics is a war, it's a battle, and that we can have this skirmish and that skirmish, and the line moves back and forth, and that uh, there's basically no end to it. And this is definitely, as Ajahn Narusaro is mentioning, is exactly not the teaching of the Buddha. That Western Buddhism is pretty far away from the teaching of the Buddha, and much closer to German Romanticism and psychotherapy and all of that kind of stuff. Um, and so that would be the foundation of where we can start, in the sense of, well, what is the teaching of the Buddha, if that's not it? And the answer to that would be that the big change that needs to be made in one's life happens right now. That this moment, and then the next moment, and then the next moment after that is all we have. And that planning for the future is the basis of why there is so much dukkha in the world. When in fact the real way of managing dukkha is that when it arises right now, to change it. This is what the practice really is all about, and that I see so many students begin to practice correctly, get enormous benefit out of it, and then think that they've arrived someplace, or they stop mixing with their Dhamma friends. They go off and get involved with work and relationships and all of that, and they forget that all of that joy that they got was because they were practicing correctly right in that very moment, and now they're not doing it. And many of them then will wake up to say, oh, I've got to go back and start to practice again. And the basic of the practice is to be in the present moment and looking at what's going on, looking at the senses, all 6 of them, and that begin to pay more attention to the senses that are associated with right now, and not so much associated with the mind sense that is always working on old data. That's in fact the whole point is that the incremental changes are based because it's, let's say, heavily burdened by the past, rather than letting each moment be brand new. And so staying in sensory awareness, in the sense of looking, hearing, and touching and being in the body, experiencing the breathing, is much more of what we need to do. But in order to get there, we have to start watching this mind door that we have, and recognizing what kind of thoughts that we're having. That even students who have been practicing for a while will say, oh, I'm burdened by my family, to where in fact that's not the correct way of looking at it, that the family doesn't burden you. Your thoughts about your family is what burdens you. And they say that I don't know how to respond to these circumstances. And in fact, the circumstances are still within the mind. They're not outside. That we can, in fact, because we are, let us say, not training ourselves correctly, we can't tell the difference between what's outside and what's inside. Another thing that's very interesting about that, and I've seen some articles recently of, let us say, these well-known Buddhist places that have so many seminars and so many Zoom calls and all of these kind of retreat things and whatnot, are now going after the college or the university type. That in fact, this German Romanticism that you mentioned is the philosophy of the universities, and in the sense that in the universities you have Western philosophy and very little Eastern philosophy, and any Eastern philosophy is winds up in the religious department. And that the real point is that neither the religious department at a university nor the philosophy department in the university, neither one of them are going anywhere near what the Buddha taught. That many people will say that Buddhism is not a religion, it's a philosophy, and I don't think that it's either one of those things. That you could say it like this, that religion is a bunch of old stories that have become, let us say, the doctrines of the church that are not based in reality at all. The example of that is that if there was a Jesus, he taught some very good things. That much of the stuff that Jesus taught in the that's recorded in the Gospels actually agrees with what the Buddha said. But Christianity is nowhere near that. That they've elevated Jesus, put him up in the sky, made him a special son of God, makes him responsible for your sins. I guess a lot of that had to do with justification of why their teacher got crucified. To where it's very easy to see why he got crucified. He broke into the temple and he messed with the bankers. And the bankers had him nailed up. That was not a wise move on Jesus's part, but it founded a religion. Now, on the other side of the coin, Western philosophy is kind of designed like looking for this ultimate truth that Christianity promises, but only has a bunch of stories about. And this ultimate reality or this ultimate trip is a long, long journey. And we could then say that the teaching of the Buddha is neither a philosophy nor is it a religion. What it is a cure for what ails you right now. And what ails us right now is that we don't like things, or we like them and we want them. That we really don't understand that everything that's there is there because we're unaware of how we feel about things, and that the feelings are, let us say, conditioned by the thoughts that we have, and the thoughts that we have are conditioned by our past. And so all of this conditioning is going on, leading us to that point that we are ignorant about what's really going on within the mind. Also, going back to that issue about philosophers invading Buddhism, that there are guys that have, more than one PhD. They've studied philosophy, and now they're beginning to study Buddhism in the sense of Tibetanism and whatnot. And in doing so, it's just more reading of books. That look how many tens of thousands of books there are about Buddhism. And you could say two things about that. One is the guy who reads the book is not getting that much out of it. And number two, the people who wrote the books because the reading that they did, they didn't get much out of it. The same thing actually happens, by the way, in many of professions, especially psychotherapy, that almost all of the people who wind up being psychotherapists do so because they were failed psychotherapy clients. And they learn more about psychology and more about psychology. They never really get cured, but they learn more and more and more. Then they become qualified to become a psychologist. And neither the psychologists nor their new clients are actually taking the cure for the spiritual disease. And that spiritual disease that we can say has many forms, but one of them is an existential longing that every one of us feels like that we're missing something. Do you understand what I'm talking about there, don't you? That's
Yeah,
we're out
lately I've
seeking,
been.
we're looking for something.
Yeah, I understand. I think I've sort of concluded lately that, to go back to some of that psychoanalytic psychotherapy framework, that, if you thought of, like, there is a doubt there's like a fundamental doubt that arises, and you and I have talked
Hmm.
about this before. You've cued me into this, that this doubt comes up, and I think that, belief just kind of sits there and emerges out of the ego as a response to that doubt that's coming from the depths of this, the metaphysical depths of the being. There is something there. The German romantics and what became psychotherapy out of that, or depth, let's call it depth psychology. There
Hmm.
is something there. Like, there's, the human being can, you can have these mystical experiences, whether it's at a church or Kabbalah or a sweat lodge or something. And yet you just need one of a couple weeks later or a couple months later, you need one of those again, because
Hmm.
it didn't actually assuage, it didn't actually resolve the doubt at its root. And as I understand it, that's the Dhamma. The Dhamma says, let's untie this knot once and for
Hmm.
all.
Yes, that's true. By the way, hello, Nick. Welcome to the call.
Hey guys, good to see you.
Yeah, today we're basically talking about Western philosophy and the Eastern philosophy to go along with it is not what the Buddha taught, and that we all have an existential longing or need. We're looking for something, and that we always take the easy way out or the wrong cure. Another way of saying it is we take the long way out. Simple geometry will show what I mean by that. As a right triangle, you have a point A and a point B and a point C. And the distance between A and B plus the distance of B to C is a longer journey than directly from A to C. And that Western philosophy is always taking that trip that's in the wrong direction of where we actually want to go. An example of that is that the boy wants to be happy. He thinks if he gets a girlfriend, he'll be happy. And in order to get a girlfriend, he buys what's called a chick magnet or a pocket rocket, some sort of automobile, because he thinks if he has the automobile, he can get the girl. And if he gets the girl, he'll be happy. Well, even if he gets all of that stuff, he still hasn't gotten his happiness. We're all going in the wrong direction. And you could say, we started talking about this very early, Tim, about Edward Bernays. He's the one who has really cemented that mentality into the Western mind state. So that you see, for instance, America will have a good government when one party actually beats down the other party and takes over. And the Republicans want to beat down the Democrats and take over so that they can get their way, thinking that they'll have a good government. And then the Democrats are thinking, oh, the Republicans are way off. Let us beat them down, take over the government, and then we'll have good governance. But in fact, neither one of the parties or any political party has the answers to government. And in that regard, you could say that humanity has never had a good government, never had one. That in fact, possibly the closest governments that we've ever had would be from the perspective of a a benign dictator. which means that he's not out there messing with the people, trying to get something from them, and then the people don't really care about the government at all. And so when people have no government that they have to worry about, that's the best kind of government. The government that you never see, you never hear from. They don't come and tax you. They don't take your stuff. They don't ask for you to vote. They don't promise you stuff. They don't tell you how bad those other people are. And so that would be a benign form of government. And the way we can think about that is that, well, maybe that's what we need to have for ourselves, is taking a benign position to where we don't hassle ourselves about improving, that there's no reason, Tim, to make these incremental changes, that right now is good enough. There's no place to go. We don't need to improve government. We need to stop improving government. We don't need to improve ourselves. We need to stop trying to improve ourselves, to accept ourselves the way that we actually are already. Hello, Corey. Good to see you. All right. So this whole idea then about the Western or the German romanticism of someday my prince will come, or something will happen in the future and then I will be happy, is the basis of Western philosophy, the basis of Western culture, and the basis of Western Buddhism. It's all wrapped up in that same problematic going towards the future, because now is not good enough. And the teaching of the Buddha really is succinct in the sense of dukkha, dukkha nirodha. If you can see the dukkha, if you can see your dissatisfactions and wanting to make improvements, then we can see, if we can see that and recognize that that's dukkha itself, is wanting something that we don't have in the present moment, we can change that. And the change that we make is the change into the term in Pali would be sukha, which is exactly opposite of dukkha. And dukkha means that we're dissatisfied. We want to make improvements. There's an incremental improvement. There's some place way down the road that's a better place than what we have now, rather than recognizing where we are right now is okay. It's good enough. But we need to remember that, because we have been deeply, deeply trained to be dissatisfied. That from an early age, let us say possibly the worst case would be putting a child in school. Now, an education is marvelous if it's the right kind of education, but generally we're teaching our kids to be dissatisfied with whatever it is that they've got. So we wind up telling our kids, oh, go to school, do your homework, pick up your clothes, do what you're told to do. And we get into that habit of, oh, if I do what I'm told to do, then I'll get a reward. There's this built-in delayed gratification. And what we need instead is to find ways of getting immediate gratification. And if we can go from one immediate gratification to another immediate gratification to another immediate gratification, right down through moment by moment, then that's great. That's what we need to have, is the fact that we're getting our gratification right here, right now. Well, that takes a mental training, because we've already trained the mind to be dissatisfied. We've trained the mind to want something, to go along to get along, to do what we're told to do, hoping to get our gratification later. Then, in fact, possibly the worst case of that would be, in Christianity, you gotta die before you can live. Heaven is something that you get after you die, rather than something that you can create for yourself right now. That in fact we're already in paradise. And we can look at, I think that we mentioned this before about the story of Adam and Eve in the Bible, is that they lost their paradise because of their judgments, judging this good and that bad. In other words, we're not enjoying what we do have. We're always looking for something better. And the real teaching of the Buddha is to learn to be satisfied just right now. This is it. Can we, in fact, train our mind so that when we are sitting down, we can tell ourselves that we are safe, we are secure, we are comfortable right now? Well, that's pretty hard to do when when the body itself is out there in some sort of dangerous situation, like being on the stand or being at the police station, being in the hospital, being in church, being in school, because all of those places are built upon dissatisfaction and the improvement of dissatisfaction, rather than finding a place out in the woods, under a tree, in an empty hut, or on a pile of straw, where right there it's okay. Everything is fine. And so this is why the Buddha talks about in the beginning that we need seclusion to get away from all of the dissatisfaction, both coming from other people outside and also our own dissatisfaction within our own mind. And so by sitting down and start bringing mindfulness or paying attention to what we're doing right to the present moment, bringing it to the fore, so that what we're paying attention to is what we're thinking. That in a lot of students then will, like I said before, they will say, oh, how do I handle this circumstance? Not recognizing that the circumstance is not coming from the outside, the circumstance is coming from within. And so all of these books that people read, my joke is that the only book that anybody really ever needs to read is the book between their ears. To look at what you're thinking, look at how you feel, look at what's going on, so that you can make a change right here, right now. That if you find yourself being critical of yourself, oh, you're ugly, oh, you're fat, oh, you're poor, oh, you're this or that, we can instead have nurturing thoughts rather than not the critical thoughts. We can have the nurturing thoughts of, yeah, but I'm okay. Yeah, I'm ugly, so what? No problem with that. Yeah, I'm fat. That's okay. I don't have to be on a diet to feel good. I can feel good right now. Oh, I'm poor. That's okay. Poor people don't have to worry about money. They don't have any. And so we can just start having this present moment. So philosophy is all about making the life better. And the real teaching of the Buddha is all about life's good enough right now. Don't need to make an improvement. This requires a lot of self-acceptance. That in fact, one of the ways of looking at it is that if we're trying to make improvements in our life, then one of the things that we don't want to see is all the problems, all of our wrongdoing. And so we hide from it. We will tell ourselves lies and we'll lie to other people. Oh, I didn't do it. Or, oh, no, that's not me. I disagree with you. That we don't like to be criticized, because that criticism points out that we're not nearly as far along in the journey than we would like to be. But if we can stop the criticisms and start having a kind of self-acceptance, as the phrase is called, nurture ourselves. Oh, you're okay right now. There's nothing to fear. There's no place to go. There's nothing that needs to be done. And we can just be satisfied. That when we make plans and make deadlines, that means that because we haven't met the line yet, we're dead. We can only live after we pass the deadline. And the answer would be, hey, it doesn't matter whether that deadline is met or not. I'm alive right now. Right now is all that matters. And so this is basically what you were talking about, Tim, with Western philosophy is all about improvement. Christianity is all about improvement. Business is all about improvement. Oh, buy our product and you'll be better off. Or it's all politics is all about improvement. Oh, if you vote for our party, then things will get better. And basically, things never do get better. The war just keeps going on. And so people wind up generally in old age being even more grumpy, even more unhappy than they were when they were out in the war. Because once they retire, they recognize that the war is over and I lost. And we get disappointed in old age. So actually practicing the Dhamma in old age, it may be a little bit too late because we're really, really then stuck into that idea of making improvements. And so this is also the practice, and we need to practice this over and over and over and over again. We need to practice this because we've been practicing making improvements our whole lives, trying to make it better, trying to find something out there, a B, in order to help us get to C, when in fact we can go directly to C. And that directly is to change from that critical mentality into the nurturing mentality, to change the, oh, I'm trying to hide what I've done wrong, into it's okay that you messed up. Just watch what you're doing because you can see in advance when you're about to mess up. And generally, we almost always mess up when we're already in dukkha. If we're already satisfied, then we're unlikely to do someone harm. If the mind is noble and you don't want anything, then you're very unlikely to go hurt somebody to get it. You're not going to kill them. You're not going to rob them. You're not going to lie about them because you already are satisfied with what we've got. So this is the real teaching of the Buddha, dukkha, dukkha nirodha, and yet Western philosophy, the German Romanticism, Christianity, Western Buddhism is all about that incremental change, which basically the practice of meditation in the West winds up, look at the dukkha, see the dukkha, recognize that this dukkha is associated with that dukkha, then that dukkha takes us right down the dukkha rabbit hole. And that's not the teaching of the Buddha. The teaching of the Buddha is to see that dukkha and come out of it right now. To see the dukkha before it even gets you. See it in advance. It's like being able to miss an arrow because you see it coming, you can dodge it. That you could say then that the Dhamma dude's whole job in life is to play dukkha dodgeball. To dodge it before it hits you. But if it does hit you, come out of it immediately. Don't sit there with the, oh, poor me, I got hit with dukkha. Oh, poor me, I've been criticized. Oh, poor me, I'm criticizing me. And start to nurture it. Start to say, everything is okay right now. And we need to practice that over and over and over again. Right now is good enough. Everything is okay right now.
Well,
that if we go ahead.
I would just say that I think there is when you talk about this incremental approach, that's looking at it through like a resilience or grit mindset. But from the perspective of a therapeutic perspective, is that there is marginal value in what's going on there. There's just enough value to keep you coming back.
Exactly.
Whether it's a day or it's a week or it's a month, you're coming back. And the trouble is that it keeps you from seeing, well, I guess it's unfortunate that it's effective because it keeps you from seeing who put the load there in the first place, right? Who put the, if prayer takes a load off, the trouble with it is it keeps you from seeing who put the load there in the first place. And you talked about the textbook or the book being between our ears. Well, yeah, I'm the one who put the load there.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
Yes.
Dhammarato, I've got to go. It was
Oh,
good talking with you. And
all
I'll leave you
right.
to it with the other two here. I'll see you next week.
See you later.
Okay. So, Nick, do you have any questions?
Every time I have a question, I just patiently wait, and then the next thing you say is the answer to whatever question I had. So that's usually how it goes.
Yes, this whole idea of Western philosophy has invaded the Buddhism, that Buddhism has come from the East to the West through a kind of a filter. And that filter is the mindset or the mind state that we have. Now, one point that we can make is that when Buddhism spread in Asia, it was always spread by noble monks, most likely in a small group, who went around to teach that right now is okay. Everything right now is all right. Just look at the fact that you have the idea that things are not okay and that they need improvement. And so Buddhism was well established in Asia, but Buddhism did not come to the West through the monastic order like it did when it spread to Asia, that it came through book reading, philosophers, translators, even the best well-known Western Buddhists nowadays have never been monks, or if they were, less than a year. And that the tradition is that a monk for the first 5 years is under the arm of his upajjhaya, and then after 10 years as a monk, he can begin to teach. Well, our most famous and well-known teachers did not spend 10 years as a monk. They did not spend 10 years in the Bhikkhu Sangha learning day by day, moment by moment, that this is what's happening right now is good enough. And so in Western Buddhism, it's almost like the monastic order is kind of forgotten, or at best put up on high on a shelf, so that we have all an enormous respect for Ajahn Chah and Bhikkhu Buddhadasa, the Dalai Lama, and then now in this generation, enormous respect for Ajahn Sumedho, Ajahn Amaro, Ajahn Pasanto, Santikaro, Ajahn Dhammavitu, and all of those guys, put them up high on the shelf, where these guys don't even want to be high on a shelf. They never did. What they're looking for instead is, let's be happy right now, and let's spread that joy so that everybody can be happy right now without having these incremental um, betterments. And so this is where Western Buddhism is this. It's the same point of, let's make an incremental change, moving from an A to a B and another A to a B. And now it's gotten kind of pricey. Oh, you'll really be a Dhamma dude. You'll be on top of the world if you take our teacher's training course. And the teachers are really never trained in a teacher's training course. The way that the Asians train the monks is by putting them in a position to where they have to teach. It's like the senior monk will say, okay, it's time to have a Dhamma talk. Everybody comes into the hall, and then one of the students, his point is says, okay, and now it's your time to teach. And everybody here already knows the Dhamma, and everybody here, including the teacher, is listening. And so this is how teachers are trained, is by putting them in the position of being able to teach right then and there, to where with the incremental approach is long teachers training. You have to listen to this talk, you have to read this book, you have to sit in this class, you have to do this Zoom call. And really, the teacher is a teacher when he's teaching. It's always right here in the moment. That's where it all boils down to. And that the Western Buddhism has always come from the Western mentality of incremental changes, making improvements, rather than the Buddha's mentality of you don't need to make any improvements. You're already okay. Enjoy your moment right now. You're good enough. Love yourself right now, warts and all. One of the ways that I talk about it is that whatever damage you've ever done, whatever terrible things you've had done in your past, whatever gross memories you have about how bad a person you were, none of those things actually killed you. You're still here. You're still alive. Right now is your opportunity to get over your past, to stop fretting over what we've done wrong and trying to fix it, making amends, and start living our lives happily right here, right now. That's the real teaching of the Buddha, is to be happy right now. Don't worry, be happy. But we spend all of our time worrying about trying to fix the broken past. He did me wrong. I've got to get even. Revenge is, in fact, one of the most motivating factors that we ever see. That somebody criticizes us, and that motivates us to either get better or to criticize him back, rather than recognizing that there's a lot of criticism out there. It doesn't hurt you. You hurt you. You're the one who takes that criticism and feels bad. Oh, if he says I'm this, that, and the other thing, then that means that other people won't love me. Well, we don't need other people to love us. What we need, in fact, is not even to love ourselves. What we need, in fact, to get to the point of, I don't need to be loved. I'm already okay. The need to be loved means that I'm not okay, and loving myself is, in fact, a cure for a disease we don't have. Because we're already okay. We don't need love. Go ahead.
Oh, I
Nick,
was just adjusting the camera.
Okay.
I was on board. Yeah. Whenever I think you're going in one direction, you always switch it, and then I end up agreeing with you again. You're right. We don't need love.
Corey, what do you have to say?
You're on mute.
I guess lately I'm kind of being reminded about how much I'm not really, adding to the satisfaction or the love or things like that. I've gotten to a point where I don't really have the negativity anymore, but I'm also not really putting a lot of effort into making it anything more. I'm just kind of like in a neutral ground, and but I've been noticing like a lot of lack of motivation and kind of like blandness and apathy, so I've found that the first part of practice was getting rid of negative thoughts, and then you have to continue to implant the good thoughts. Otherwise you just kind of, it loses steam and you just get to kind of a neutral ground, which isn't bad but it's not good. But I just have been feeling kind of like it's, I wouldn't say it's satisfaction, but it's kind of like there's no negativity, and so it's kind of like okayness, but not really kind of like super great. And so I feel like, I've just been reminded, that I'm kind of like getting a little bit lazy there. So.
Okay. Well, we can talk about that because there's various levels of it. That in fact, one of the teachings of the Buddha is about karma. That in fact, the primary belief about karma is universal all over the place, in the sense that if you do good, you'll get good results, and if you do bad, you'll get bad results. Well, that's actually that incremental improvement method. Oh, you got to keep doing good and you got to keep avoiding bad one step at a time, and eventually you'll get someplace. But that's not, again, the teaching of the Buddha, because the Buddha divides karma into 4 groups. And the third group is what is referred to as mixed. That in fact, there really is no absolute good karma and absolute bad karma. Every cloud has a silver lining. Everything is mixed together so that there is both good and bad. And this is why the incremental method doesn't work, is because every step that we take, we slide back 2 steps, 1 step forward, 2 steps back, or maybe 2 steps forward and 1 step back, but we seem to be able to get nowhere. But then the 4th level of karma is neither mixed nor anything, that in fact it's absence of actions, in the sense that we don't do good to try to gain something. That this is what merit in Asia and donations to the church or buying a product. You have to pay something in order to get something. It's a business deal. Doing good in order to get good. And when we stop looking at it like that, because we're not trying to get anything, we're already okay. And then also is because we're can see dukkha and avoid it. We not only avoid it for ourselves, but we avoid harming others. And that means that it's got neither bad action getting bad results nor good action getting good results. It's neither one. And then the Buddha says that this is the action that leads to the end of action, which, Corey, is exactly what you were getting at, that sometimes we get into this kind of blasé in-between place that actually is got the shadow of dukkha in it. Because you're saying that, oh, I should be having great big happy thoughts, getting some positive benefit out of it. And that I would congratulate you for seeing that. As we move down the path, it's good to have those good positive thoughts, because it's actually repairing a lot of old damage. If we keep having positive thoughts because we're planning on having positive thoughts, we remember to have positive thoughts, then we're going to gain some benefit from that by undoing all the damage. The way that I have said it many times is that we have been talking ourselves into feeling bad our whole life. Now it's time to talk ourselves into being good. But eventually along the way, that does balance out. And the balance point then means that there really is nothing left to do. And so you could then actually begin to congratulate yourself for coming to that balance point, instead of calling it bland, because bland means that, oh, you've got to make it better, and recognizing that, well, easy going, nothing to do, blandness is in fact the path itself. That's where we're going. We're going to a great big nothingness. This is what the teaching of the Buddha about sunyata is really all about, is to recognize that things are really empty. That there really is no great benefit in doing good. If we think that, oh, there is great benefit in doing good, then we'll keep doing good and wind up being disappointed. The best thing to do is to recognize right now it's just okay. I don't have to go anywhere or do anything or gain anything. Everything right now is just fine. This is why you could say then eventually the Buddha's teaching leads us, it's the actions that we take of practicing correctly that lead us to no action at all. And so the monks kind of hang around all day enjoying each other's company, but they're not trying to build a great big what. They're not trying to get famous. That in fact the great big what and the fame comes from the people respecting the monks for doing nothing at all. other than giving good advice to, hey, man, chill out. Don't worry about your wife. Let her yak if that's what she wants to do. And then to the wife, we can say, hey, let the husband be okay. He's all right. You don't have to yak at him so much. And you can bring both the husband and the wife into a state of being easy with each other. So we have to make sure that we understand that when we get into that blasé kind of nothingness, it's uncomfortable. So all you have to do, Corey, is to tweak that by telling yourself, hey, I'm blasé and I'm comfortable and I'm doing nothing. Isn't that great? Congratulate yourself for having nothing to do. The Buddha actually has the phrase in talking about it is that the job that needed to be done has been done. What is the job that needs to be done? Is to stop having jobs to do. Stop having those jobs to do. Stop talking about it always bland and I need to do this or that. No, just say, hey, bland is great. Isn't good enough.
I really like seeing this talk through the triangle. Everything you're saying, I'm thinking like, yep, just go to C. Keep going to C.
Yeah, just keep going right to C. This is good enough. Yeah, I'm bland, so what? I don't have to fix bland. Bland's not B, bland is C. This is good enough. And we keep practicing that over and over again. This is good enough because we're in such a habit of it ain't good enough and needs to be fixed. This is what Western Buddhism is all about. Making more incremental changes. So Western Buddhism is in fact no different than Christianity, is no different than philosophy, is no different from politics, is no different from business, because all of it is based upon making things better. And the answer is, we don't need to make things better. It's already okay. All we need to do is keep remembering that everything is already okay. No place to go, nothing to do. The spring comes and the grass grows all by itself. Or the other Zen point is that before I had to chop wood and carry water. And now I just chop wood and carry water. Before we expected to get something out of chopping wood and carrying water. And now we just do it because that's what we're doing. There's nothing to it. Having an easy life, there's nothing to it. You know that joke about the students will come and says, well, I had a great meditation. Oh, everything was so great. I was on top of the world. And my joke, the answer to that is, you ain't seen nothing yet. Now, in normal phrase, ain't seen nothing means is that what you've got is not really good enough, then there's something better than that. But really, the Buddhist joke about it is you ain't seen nothing, which means how great you feel. There's nothing to that. There's nothing to it. You feel any way you want to. And the easiest is to feel, this is good enough. I don't have to do anything, no place to go. And so that kind of bland state winds up being the very best of them. Unless we don't like it and want to improve it. But when we can get to that bland state and we're just really satisfied with, yeah, wow, just relax. The job that needed to be done has been done. My to-do list is empty now.
So you think the only problem with the bland state is that we're making a problem with it, that it's actually like, if you have enough acceptance of it, it somehow feels good and bland?
Yeah, good and bland.
Okay. I can kind of, I'm like trying to experiment with it now. And, definitely if you have any resistance to anything, really, you're going to have dukkha and like, you know, the negative feeling. So
Resisting is the dukkha. That's it. That's a good, because, you know, resistance with electronics or in engineering, the car, the reason that it rolls to a stop and needs a lot of energy is because the tire has friction on the road. There's resistance there. That in fact, all the work that any human being has ever done was because they were resisting something. The immovable force, or the unstoppable force, is always heading against an unmovable object. Why can't they just sit down and be happy together? So when you're feeling blah and bland, you can congratulate, hey, this is great. Blah is great.
I'll give it a try. We'll see.
No
I got a lot of that. Yeah. Hey, I mean, it's definitely, you know, a step in the right direction. Because like I was saying, when you're in a kind of, I guess it was just hard for me to see how the resistance to the blahness is what was making it into a negative state. But yeah, I could kind of see it, you know, because it's very, 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 very subtle. So it's like some kind of remnant from a time, like when you just do it your whole life. So I guess that's like a really good thing, you know, that I've gotten to that point where now the issue is just that long-term programming. And I guess I got to like keep back with the practice. Who knows how long, but I could feel it working immediately. So that definitely is what it is. And I mean, everyone ever really wants to hear you got to practice a lot more. But luckily, this is the practice that you feel happy when you're doing.
Yeah.
So it's a good practice to do.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And not only that, but we get the immediate benefit of having the feeling that the job has been done. This is it. This is all we need to do.
Right. I think there's a natural fear that keeps coming up is, but what if I don't do anything? That's one of the main fears.
Ask that question. What is the answer? Well, what if you don't do anything?
So even though I've had the experience of continuing to do things, it's like I guess it doesn't mean, I guess you can't say anything really. It's just one of those things you just got to keep practicing and keep doing it. But I don't know. I just like that seems to be one of the main things that comes up with like resistance to, you know, that sense of I don't have to do anything else. Is like, well, what if I don't do anything at all?
Okay. Guess what?
So, yeah.
Nobody, though, can do that. That's kind of the extreme rather than the balance or the middle path of the Buddha. All right, so the middle path of the Buddha is that we're not saying existentially stop doing everything. Like one guy had said, if I do what you told me to do, I'd never get out of bed. And my thought right now is that, yeah, but your bed's going to be full of crap.
That's true. He'll probably get up enough effort to.
He'll get up, right. But can he get up and happily clean himself off? Or does he think, oh, I've done something wrong, oh, I should not be doing this, and now we're back into criticizing ourselves rather than just enjoying that we've crapped all over ourselves. So what?
That's the real test of practice right there. You know, you crap yourself and you're like, this is the greatest thing ever.
I'm going to think of this call if that ever happens.
What was that, Nick?
I'm going to think of this call if that ever happens to me. You'll remember this.
Yes, in fact, I had a talk with Gary, and he really got a great big load out of it in the sense of killing a chicken. And the enlightened chicken is, well, if you're going to do it anyway, then I'll be tomorrow's dinner for people. That'll be all right. Just sacrifice yourself because they're going to kill you anyway. You can't stop them from killing you. You're going to be tomorrow's dinner. Why not just enjoy that? Yeah, that's what's happening.
Yeah, if I was a chicken, for me, that would be the best thing, because you just move on to the next life,
Yeah, just
Wouldn't want to be a chicken for too long.
Well, even if there is no next life, at least we did what happened happily. It was all right. This moment that's going to come to every one of us. There's going to be a moment when we're going to die. Are you ready to do that happily? Because, if you're dead, then what's important? You can think of all the stuff that you're doing now that's important to you. What's important after you're dead? Nothing. There's nothing to it. I mean, dead is really being easygoing, isn't it? In fact, it's not going anywhere. It's just, happily rotting. And so dying, there's nothing to it. And yet we have all been trained to, you've got to keep incrementally moving. You got to keep going. You got to keep doing. And that death is a terrible thing to happen. We go to funerals, big expensive funerals and mourning and all of that kind of stuff. When instead of celebrating, hey man, I am so glad that he's dead. He doesn't have to do any of the crap that I've got to do. He doesn't have to clean himself up. He can get an embalmer to do that for him. And so when we begin to think about death is not all of that bad, then we can prepare for it. If we can die happily, then we can live happily. There's really nothing to it at all. But many of us will plan. We go to the doctors, we want to have good health, we want to live on and on and on, as if that was a major goal in life, is to live to a really ripe old age. The point, though, is that can you live to a ripe old age happily and then die happily, or you keep making incremental changes, wanting to be better, wanting to fix this, instead of just being satisfied with how things are. Bland, nothing, dead chicken, tomorrow's lunch. So what? Can we get into that mentality that everything that's happening is okay? That's what we need to train the mind to get into that, because the mind is so well trained at right now is not good enough. We got to make it better.
Can we talk about the negativity of emotions and what is the correct stance to be having towards because I've heard people talk about aversion, balancing aversion and attraction, so that you're right now is okay even when there's strong negative emotions. And I've experienced how they're very short in duration, but sometimes.
Well, here's the point, though. How did we talk ourselves into strong negative emotions? We weren't watching. Those strong and negative emotions built up, or let us say, it happened suddenly. Yeah, but it happened suddenly because of all of the past that we've had. But if our past is now full of joy, then whenever anything tragic happens, we don't have a great big emotional fit over it. And so those are negative emotions that we have are actually okay. They'll pass. When you see that you've gotten angry, you calm down. It's only when we really want something and desiring and wanting to make things better that we get and stay angry. But as soon as we can see our anger, we can say, hey, I don't need to do this. Everything's going to work out just fine. I'll be okay. And come back to that state of bland, easygoing, nothing. Don't worry, be happy. Everything is already okay. Can we accept that we don't have to make any improvements? We can just go along living our life happily. That when a negative emotion comes, all we have to do is see, I'm in a negative state right now, and that's not nearly as enjoyable as having nothing. So we can say it's all going to work out. There's no problems. Really, the only reason why I'm upset right now is because I wanted something that I didn't have. I was in a hurry to get something. And so an example of that is when the daughter yells at her dad, dad gets angry and yells back at his daughter because he thinks that she doesn't respect him. Well, actually, while he's angry, she's not respecting him either. But if when the daughter gets angry and yells at her dad, if the dad's just okay, then she'll begin to respect him even more. That we actually harm ourselves by wanting stuff, and then we harm ourselves because we want it, and now we get really angry and really do a lot of harm to ourselves. Instead of just, okay, she's angry. Never mind. I've seen her angry before. I've been angry before. I forgive her for being angry. There's nothing to it. She'll get over it. And then we can just leave it. We don't have to punish her for being angry. Then, in fact, that's what happened with us when we were children. We get angry and we get punished for being angry. And so we continue that hostility. We just hide it. And the answer to that is seeing it. If we can see that we're angry, if we're uptight, if we're upset, if we're in a hurry, and say, aha, I see I'm in a hurry. Never mind. Take a deep breath and then settle down. Everything is okay right now. Everything is fine. Not a worry in the world. Basically, we put our to-do list that we just created. We got angry because the to-do list is not being done. Pack up that to-do list, throw it out, make an empty to-do list. Then, in fact, what we really need to do is to make a don't-do list. To stop. Stop running our mouth. Stop telling people that they're no good. Stop telling ourselves that we're no good. Stop trying to fix the world. Stop trying to make incremental changes. Just stop all of that and just be stopped. Be bland. Oh, everything's okay. Yeah, it's bland, but that's good. Easy peasy. Nowhere to go. Nothing to do. That's the Buddhist teaching of sunyata. There's nothing to it.
All righty.
All righty. That's exactly correct. All righty. Everything is all right. Guys, this has been a good talk. I'm glad you guys joined us.
Yeah, thanks for the questions, Corey. I learned a
See
lot.
ya. All right.
See you later, guys.
See ya.
later.
Bye-bye.